Okay, let me try to explain the question 1 of part 1. The question, it tells us that we are given 3 scenarios about study skills. One is not waiting until the last minute to begin assignments. 2, actively communicating with your instructors or your lecturer or your tutor. 3, actively seeking out resources. That is research. Now the task now is share a specific experience in your UCU academic life so far when you have either ignored or followed one of those recommendations. In your response, reflect on what the consequences were and how that experience or the consequence might shape your future study habits. Write your response between 3 to 5 paragraphs. Now the question here asks us to choose one of the 3. I remember when I was assessing the student scripts, most of them were writing on all the 3. The question says, share a specific experience in your UCU academic life so far when you have either ignored or followed one of those recommendations. So reading and understanding the instructions is very, very good and very important. So choose one. Now let's try to look at each of them and then what we would expect from your responses. The first one is not waiting until the last minute to begin assignments. Now, first of all, this question does not limit you only to writing and study skills assignment, but any assignment that you have been involved in this semester or several semesters if you have been at the university for more than 1 semester. Now, when you are given an assignment, I remember one time we went, the first day of the lecture that I had with you, I mentioned that you need to design a table or a template for all the assignments, and then their due dates, so that you know when to begin researching. First of all, brainstorming, and then researching, and then writing your first draft, and then the final draft before the date of submission. But most times students wait until it is a day or 2 to the assignment submission, and then they begin to write. In this way, you find that the quality of your work will be compromised. You won't be able to read adequately in preparation for the assignment. Oh, sorry about that. My battery was running low. So as I was saying that many times students wait until the last minute, what they always refer to as procrastination. So the quality of work is compromised because of inability to adequately research, to write the draft. You remember you are expected to edit your work, proofread, and then you can submit. So all these processes you will not be able to go through because you are already time bound. So because of that, the quality of work will be compromised. And then the second one is about actively communicating with your instructor or the lecturer. Now, it is very rare to find students are actually communicating with their lecturers or their tutors or their instructors about coursework. Sometimes you find people submitting work and the question interpretation is different. Sometimes you may find that a student doesn't understand a word or the purpose of the assignment, but struggles alone without making inquiry about the person, from the person who set the question. Now, I do remember even with you, the medical school, there are students, especially those who attempted the question on climate change and drug resistance infections. So some people were writing about floods, about storms, and no connection completely with infections. If the floods, then migration or movement to safe places because of the changes in weather, and it has maybe connected with the treatment of a certain disease. Maybe, but I found that some of the essays were not making sense at all. And now the writers had to repeat the work because the quality of their interpretation was completely not in line with the question. And if at all they had called me, they could have written a better essay. So it is always expected that if you are given an assignment, communicate with your lecturer, not only about the question interpretation, but also about deadlines. Sometimes we are human beings. Sometimes you may find that you are caught up in something and you cannot be able to submit the coursework on a specified deadline. Now, because you went away, you returned on the day of the submission of the coursework, and now you cannot be able to write and submit the coursework. Now, you submit the coursework, you write the coursework, but late, you go to the lecturer, and the lecturer possibly tells you, I am not going to assess you, I'm not going to accept your coursework. Or some may even say, if I'm going to accept your coursework, I'm going to deduct 10 marks. So all this because of absence of communication with lecturers. Sometimes even important to find out, where do I find resources? You've been given an assignment. Probably you have only been able to find materials only online, but there are times when a lecturer would insist, I want printed texts. So if you cannot be able to find, you can call the lecturer and find out, where do I find the material? There's this book, sometimes a lecturer may recommend certain titles. So you could even ask, where can I get these titles from? So all these are part of the conversation that you need to have with your lecturer to ensure that at least the quality of your marks, your performance, not just marks, but the quality of your performance should be good at least. So at the university, this is what is expected. Not like high school when you're given an assignment, you go and die with it alone. But at university, we expect to have a collaboration with your lecturers and tutors so that at least you are guided throughout the process, because it would be very painful for a student at the university to fail a paper, especially coursework. That shouldn't happen at all. Then the third question, the third part is actively seeking out resources. This is about research. So seeking out resources. Research, we mentioned during the first time of the first lecture the first day of the lecture, we listed sources of information where you can find resources from textbooks, from online. You can even use some based on observations. Like for instance, you, the medical students, you use a lot of observations, especially if you're doing lab work, laboratory work, sometimes through interviews, questionnaires. So all these ways by which you can find resources. So were you able to find resources that you needed, the variety of resources, because when you're doing assignment, you don't need to limit yourself only to one form of resources or source of information. But I know very well that when I gave you assignments, most of you relied on online only. I I don't think that some of you even went and read textbooks to find out information to help you shape your assignment. So, if possible, I would have even expected some of you to have quoted where you went and interfaced with a medical doctor. You live very close to a hospital, Mengo Hospital. So I expected some of you to have reflected this in your coursework, but I did not see this. Probably because you didn't have plan for it and you did not make appointments with the medical doctors, or even you have medical doctors who are lecturers there. You could have actually even had an interface after making an appointment. You make an interface with them so that you record whatever discussion that you have. And then in the essay, you say, during a conversation with Dr. So-and-so on this subject, on this particular date, I learned this disorder. The doctor said this in reference to this particular point. So all these are part of the resources that you need to pull and integrate in your research. Now, the way that we would have expected if you were a candidate or a student that semester, we expected this particular assignment to be written like a narrative. It is like a story, but a narrative which is a non-fiction. We didn't actually talk about narrative writing. This is what I wanted us to talk about I think about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, you had a schedule, an engagement at main campus. You went to attend a seminar, I think a seminar or a lecture, or presentation. So I wasn't able to, but what I wanted us to look at was how to tell a non-fiction narrative. So a non-fiction narrative is a narrative that you write about factual things that happened, and you don't exaggerate, you don't include things that did not happen, you don't use imagination. So like in this particular case, you just simply tell a story of how, because you're picking one incident that happened. So what was that happened? For instance, you're taking the first part of waiting until the last minute and then you begin writing your assignment. You were limited, so the deadline was the following day. How you panicked. You went actually even try to read, but you could not be able to read because you are panicking, you wanted to beat the deadline, possibly you even return, or you started assignment when you're very tired and you could not able to concentrate. At certain moments, maybe you are even dozing, but you struggled through and managed to write the assignment. But when the paper was returned, your performance was poor, and the lecturer or the instructor or the tutor commented that the quality of your work lacked certain substance. Then now that is part of what happened. And then now the last part that is expected is what lessons did you learn from whatever happened. It could have been a positive thing. You started reading early and prepared your assignment early in time. By the time the deadline for the submission arrived, you were already completed. You have read through the work, you edited, you proofread, you cross-checked the data for accuracy and so forth. And the quality of your work was good, and the lecturer or the tutor or the instructor gave you very good marks, followed with very good a comment that was very positive. So you can actually make it from a positive one or from a negative one, depending on what kind of experience you went through. And then now, what lesson did you learn from this that you expect to carry in the subsequent assignments? Probably if you did, it was a painful experience, then you will now tell us in this story that you have learned your lessons, that procrastination is usually not the best thing to do. It is always good to prepare in time for everything in life, not only just coursework assignment that you're writing. If it was positive, you said, I'm going to carry on with this. The only thing that I need to improve on, varying or expanding the resources that I need to bring into my essay, or I will try next time to ensure that I talk to my lecturer and submit my draft to him or her before the final submission. If he or she can accept to read through my draft and make comments on areas of weaknesses that I need to address, then I will do that. So all these are part of the things that you can include in the lessons that you learn from the experience you had. Now, question 2 is a very long article about the school system. It is saying read the following. Okay, you will have a question on comprehension, and usually the questions at the task after the comprehension passage usually vary considerably. But say this is an article that appeared online on edition of the Independent. I think it's about the school closing down because of the coronavirus, if I could remember, and then the lockdown and so forth. Let me see what questions. I don't see the question. Read the following article which appeared in the online edition of the Independent, this one here. I don't seem to see the question immediately. I don't know where the question is. Then question 3. Oh, the question is here. Say, write an academic essay in which you respond to this article and argue for how one segment of the society should respond to this problem. That one segment might be the national government, religious leaders, cultural leaders, non-governmental organizations, school or university administration, or another one not mentioned here. Write your essay in 3 to 5 paragraphs. Paragraph essay, apply the strategy for academic writing that were emphasized during the term or during the semester. Let me just quickly remind myself with one paragraph about what the entire essay is about. Matov also observes a need for multiple stakeholder approach involving parish chiefs, village churches, and local cultural leaders to implement a parish level outreach strategy for engaging families with learners that are at high risk of dropping out of school. Yeah, I think this was an article that was about the state of education in the country after the lockdown, and then the homeschooling. So is homeschooling good or is homeschooling bad? Now, what could be the best way of implementing some of these strategies? If, for instance, the local leaders, we'll talk about actually the article is about dropping the rate of drop out of school because of the effect of the lockdown, the students staying too long at home without studying, and most of them were engaged in other activities, money-making activities, and they now see a lot of value in the activities, in the money-making activities that they were engaged in, and they would see now going back to school as a problem, an impediment to their future and the future of their businesses. So what should each of these individual organizations do? The local communities, what should the local communities do to ensure that students don't drop out of school? So the question requires you picking again one. And this one, I had the same kind of experience with the first one. The first question asking, pick only one and write about it. Now this one also say, pick only one body. if it is the local leaders, the church leaders, the government, non-governmental organizations, universities, and so forth, parents. So you pick on the one and say, what role should they play really to ensure that students go back, children go back to school and not drop out of school because of the issue of the pandemic. So you pick one. I remember most students were writing about government needs to do this, government needs to do this. There's one student I remember who wrote about university management, and he was advocating for a reduction in one of the arguments was a reduction in the tuition, because if the university continue to levy such very high tuition to students, and yet the lockdown affected many economic activities of the parents and guardians. Now it means students who have been going to university will apparently drop out because they can't be able to raise such high tuition or school fees. So it just simply just a question of course now, since they say that you require to use academic skills or format that were emphasized, now we expect your introductory paragraph to have the three or the four structures. An opening statement that introduces an argument, not a conclusion like some of you were doing. I even mentioned this in the last physical lecture that we had. And then we expect you to give a background to the problem, the general problem that you have introduced. And then bring in the thesis statement, and then the 3 points, if you're going to just use because say write a 3 or 2 or 5, 3 to 5 paragraph essay. So if it is 3 paragraphs, it means you're only going to look for 1 point. One paragraph is the introduction, the last paragraph is the conclusion, and then one body paragraph. Or if you're going to write the 5 paragraph essay, then you have the introduction, and then the conclusion, and then 3 points that you're going to discuss. So it was actually, I felt the paper was very fair, but because students never understood, they did not interpret the rubric well, they misinterpreted and they wrote poor essays. So this one, just three paragraphs. You already have the introduction. Spend your time on the introduction so that the quality of the introduction meets the academic standard of essay writing. Opening statement, that should be a hook. We talked about this a lot. A hook that should introduce a problem from a general outlook. Then you have the next sentence should provide some explanation, a background. Why is this a problem? You're saying, yes, this is a problem. Now, why is it a problem? Then the third part is now the thesis statement. Write the thesis statement, and then you can highlight the 3 or the 1 point that you are going to discuss in the body paragraph. And now with a sitting examination like this, you do not have references, so you cannot be able to quote or to cite. But if you have stories, you can use a story, a brief story, shouldn't be long, a brief story that illustrates a certain argument. But of course, the body paragraph needs to have a topic sentence. Some people were writing a topic sentence that were made up of about not even a sentence. We said a topic sentence should include at least a fact, an opinion about that fact. But if you just simply write, and some people were even using a subtitle-like statement for their topic sentence. So that simply makes the quality of your paragraph poor already. So ensure that your topic sentence is good enough. Use illustrations, use examples. Examples you can draw from whatever. Nobody's going to ask you and say, but where did you get this example from? So make sure that your paragraphs are well illustrated with examples, with explanations. If you have any kind of evidence, you can put the evidence there in whatever way. For instance, if but should not be statistical figures, because statistical figures somebody will ask you for the source. But anything you can even use, maybe a lecture that can do. So that is briefly what you can do with the passage. You're not being asked to analyze the passage, just read and understand the passage. So some of the arguments actually could have come even from the passage. You could get an argument from the passage and then you discuss it in the way you understood, based on the category of people, of group that you have chosen to assign that kind of responsibility to, what they need to do in order to keep the children in school after such a long period of lockdown. Now, part 3 is about editing and proofreading. Now, this is a bit difficult to talk about because each time a question is set for editing and proofreading, they vary considerably. But generally, I will tell you that please look at whatever tasks are given in the examination in relationship to what we said should be done when you're making academic writing. For instance, make sure that the sentences are ideas are complete. Sometimes you find sentences that are not complete. So those that are not complete, you see how to complete them. Now, when you are editing and proofreading, especially in this section of the examination, you are not limited only to what is given. You can complete them in the way you've understood. So don't limit yourself only to the task given and then only try to correct what. Sometimes when you are editing, you may need to bring in new words, your own words, sentences, phrases, to make the meaning clear. Sometimes you have to drop the words or phrases that are there, sometimes even deleting a sentence. All these are part of the editing process, although we did not look at it in detail. But when you are going to deal with this section, look, sometimes you may find that ideas which should be independent have been brought together, and instead of separating them using a full stop. Sometimes where a full stop is essential, you find that a full stop is omitted, and somebody doesn't seem to care so much. Now, this section we don't mark so keenly as if we are marking an English language examination paper. We at least will try to see whether you can understand the basic sentence structures that can be able to carry meaning. So if your sentences are not clear, if you cannot be able to identify sentences that are not clear and try to put them right, then it means even your own writing may be a problem. So generally this one here, look for instance, issues of unnecessary repetitions, spelling errors, tenses, and then grammar, as well as the mechanics. Well, things like we already talked about the full stop or punctuation marks generally, and then capital letters, and the capital letters used correctly. For instance, where there's a proper noun, name of a place or name of a person or people, or even subjects, for instance. So all those should carry capital letters. Or course program. Most cases, subjects usually take small letters, except those that are connected with languages. Usually, a subject like biology is supposed to be written using small letter B, but we are so accustomed to writing it using capital letters that if we don't write with a capital letter, the letter B, then it looks like actually we are making a mistake. But all subjects on the curriculum are supposed to be written using small letters, except those that are for languages, because the languages carry the name of the people who speak that language. That is why, at least for them, they need to take the capital letter. And the capital letter, for instance, French language. Actually, it should not even be said French language, it's just French. Just like Luganda, don't say Luganda languages. Luganda is already language. English language, so it is English that because the people themselves are known as English. So to distinguish the language from the people, the word language is used. So if you say English language, so English will take capital E, but language will take a small letter L, because that is supposed to how it should be written. So generally, just look at the task that is given to you. Look for basic errors, and it's only those basic errors that we shall look at. We shall not look at very technical errors that you may find it very difficult to identify. So where for instance, you're given, usually there's a question on citations or references. So for references, I was explaining to Rebecca that usually we allow students to use their own, the style that they are familiar with. It could be a style not even taught, but you are familiar with, maybe because you have used it previously, so you understand it well. So turn the paper, turn the task, and align it with that citation style. If, for instance, like we are familiar with the numerical style, so if you're given work and it is given with a structure that given in using the APA or the MLA or those others that have the name of the writer, the year of publication, and sometimes even the page number. So if you're going to use the numerical citation style, then you will remove all those from the text, and then you take them to the references page. So all those are acceptable. It is not that there's a formula that it must be this, or a rigid marking guide that say you must use this. No. We make a very flexible approach to this one here, depending on, we value the work depending on how you have presented yourself. You don't need to write that this is the Chicago, this is the E, the other time we were looking at, is it the IEE? No, you don't need to write even the citation format that you've used. Whoever is going to mark your work will know that a certain citation style has been used different from from maybe the known one, like the APA, the MLA, or so and so forth. So feel very free to use whatever style you're familiar with. Sometimes even that instruction is given, but in this particular case, it was not given. And then, that is the last one. I thought there was this other one of question, part 3. Part 3 is not here. So part 3 is usually an essay that will require you to either write an essay using the expository or the persuasive, sometimes a narrative. Rarely will you find description as an independent way of writing an essay. But previously, we used even to have a description where you're told possibly to describe how to prepare a menu or how to do, that is directional essay or writing instructions. But for the many, I think a couple of years now, the description is no longer there. So you will find, section 3, you have 3 questions. Sorry, you are required to write on any, I think 2 questions of the 3 or the 4 that are provided. So still use the academic style of writing your essay, ensuring that the introductory paragraph follows that format that we talked about. The body paragraph also follows that. Please make sure that you time yourself well so that you can be able to answer all the questions. We have received scripts from students where you find somebody has missed out a whole section, and a section could be 30 marks or 20 marks, and that's a lot of marks. Make sure that at least you touch on all the sections or sections or parts of the essay, of the examination, so that you don't miss marks just like that. So this is all I can say about the examination format and how you can go about responding to the question. Thank you, and I want to wish you the best in the exam.